Ever since Dolly the sheep, human beings have dreamed of being able to clone copies of themselves in order that they would have transplant material should the need for transplantation arise. I imagine some people fantasized about the day when they could even have their whole personality transferred into a new, clean, healthy young body. Why not? I mean, if transplantation is moral, then certainly transplantation from a clone is moral. Well, the chief challenge is the clone a person? Michael Tooley proposes that it's possible to create a clone that would not have all the necessary brain functions to gain personality. In such case, the clone would not be a person. So to speak, there's no there. Just an otherwise perfect copy of you, waiting to be harvested. What worries Tooley, however, is that at the present time, we can't guarantee any kind of success in making such a clone. And should such a clone be created that isn't perfect, that is to say that we've failed to eliminate the personality, or we create it in such a state that it's in constant pain, I mean, there isn't any real association between personality and pain. Pain's just about neurons firing off. They can have those firing off and have no real notion of personality at all. So, for various reasons that aren't really issues about cloning per se, as the ability to succeed at cloning, Tooley says human cloning, not yet. We've got a long way to go, he suggests. On the other hand, Michael Sandel suggests the very idea of cloning is wrong. The very idea of genetic manipulation is wrong. That the whole enterprise is basically an attempt to escape our ability to learn to cope with the world through the tools that we're given at birth. If we can actually risk everything, because we know there's right over there a transplant to fix it, what would human endeavor be like? You have, physically speaking, certain protective instincts that if you're an athlete at a certain level, you have to learn to overcome. I was a fencer as an undergraduate, and the first time I'm going to be in a competition, the coach takes me aside to tell me a few things we hadn't talked about, in workouts in the gym. And he said, for example, if you get up against a shorter fencer, make high line and head attacks. Because everybody is born with a natural instinct to flinch if you poke something at their eye. Now, a trained fencer learns to ignore that. And indeed, as long as I was dealing with shorter fencers with little experience, I was able to score points using my coach's advice. But when I ran into a fellow who had been around the block a few times, and I'm like, okay, I'll just throw something out at his head and he'll wince. Dude takes me out, nothing flat. And I go, oh, you can overcome those instincts. You can overcome the worry associated with a particular physical pain or physical threat. How then would we live if we knew we could get a new kidney anytime we needed one? Yeah, I just keep on drinking because I can get a new liver. I got cloned down the hall. In fact, I got a couple. I can have lots of new livers. What then? Is that how human beings should live? Isn't this turning us into just pleasure and pain machines? I mean, I can't speak for you. I can't even speak for me on this. But this is what worries Sandel, that we will be robbed of our moral agency. Now, what do I mean by moral agency? A moral agent is someone who is responsible and is an active part of our moral universe. In other words, it's the sort of individual in the world who is judged as moral or immoral in how they act, as opposed to a moral patient who is not judged as moral or as immoral because for whatever reason, they're not ruled as part of the moral universe. We would typically, for example, imagine adult human beings, you, me, as moral agents. If we were to become permanently unconscious, we would become moral patients. We would consider most human beings moral agents, but we would consider most animals, if not all, moral patients. They are not things that can be treated willy-nilly like plants, funguses, viruses, things like that, where we have no regard for them at all. But because of their nature, because of their role in our culture at large, we don't consider them capable of making moral judgments, but are nevertheless in some way protected by moral injunctions. Of course, this covers children and the mentally infirm. So he's worried we'll lose that because we will become too free-handed. He's also worried about giftedness. He suggests that in a world where everything can be replaced, in a world where everything can be made better, that gift that we have, some of us, if we have that gift, people will stop prizing it and instead will be just engaged in how can we build a better machine or even machine. If everything is up for grabs and manipulable, he says, we will lose our respect for what we are and what we are given. Now let me drive home that word given. He's not talking about the random outcomes of the shuffle of DNA. He's talking about talents from God. Right away, if you're not a believer, he loses a lot of weight with you. But he argues that giftedness doesn't require a divine intervention, and I'm inclined to agree with his point. That is, that if you're dealt a hand of cards and it's all little bitty cards that don't match, there's no smile on your face. You're dealt a hand of cards and it's all matching cards that are face cards and high cards, there's a smile on your face. You've been given a gift by the random shuffle and random deal. That gift makes us happy, gives us pleasure, creates joy among those who are looking over our shoulders and playing with us. That's why we have to have our poker faces. That gift, even from a random source, would be lost, and certain elements of joy and pleasure would disappear from the world. Now, I want to call to your attention, neither of these men have argued about the uniqueness of clonehood. Tooley looks at it briefly, but indicates, well, one identical twin is essentially the same as another identical twin, and nobody argues that we've got to kill one of them. Well, that's not a bad idea. No, I didn't say that. No. Nobody argues we need to, that one identical twin is robbing the other identical twin of an identity. But again, Tooley's point is we're not going to let these clones have identities. They're not going to have personalities. And until we can do that, they're not going to exist. Each has argued that there are reasons to not have cloning now, and Sandel has argued that there's no reason to have cloning ever. Gives you a lot to think about. Gives you a lot to talk about. keep on talking philosophy.